Let's begin this hour with new attacks from both sides in the Middle East. Israel says it has killed Iran's intelligence minister in an overnight strike.
This comes as Iranian strikes on Israel have killed at least 2 people. Tehran has vowed revenge for yesterday's killing of its security chief, Ali Larjani. For more on this, we are joined by Sebastian Usher with our partners at BBC News from Jerusalem. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us. We are reading these reports that another senior Iranian official apparently has been killed. What more can you tell us?
Yes, this is the intelligence minister, Esmail Hatib. There actually hasn't been any confirmation as yet from the Iranians, but we've seen, for example, with the killing of the supreme leader and most recently of Ali Larjani just yesterday, that what Israel has said about those killings has turned out to be correct. I think there's no reason to doubt that he has been killed, and it shows the continuing force that Israel in particular is using against leading figures in the Iranian regime. I mean, this is the decapitation strategy continuing at full force. The Israelis have said that this was a man who was deeply steeped in both attacks within and outside Iran, that he was involved in the repression of the protests back in January, but also many operations outside. I mean, he certainly had a long history with the security services in Iran.
So how has Iran been retaliating? It's such an interesting conversation because the president of the United States, the Israelis are saying that Iran has been decimated, their navy has been decimated, their ballistic missile capability has been decimated, and yet they are still able to launch attacks. So explain that to our audience.
They are. They've continued to carry out attacks here in Israel. 2 people, a couple in their 70s, were killed in Ramat Gan in the center of Israel earlier today. There have also been attacks that have been carried out, as we've seen day in, day out, in Gulf countries, neighboring Iran. We've seen Israel confirming that it's carried out an attack on one of the main oil facilities in Bushehr province in Iran. That's a major escalation of the strategic attacks on the oil facilities, essentially the financial capability of Iran and its infrastructure. And in response, Iran has said that it will take considerable revenge, and it's called on local facilities, oil facilities in regional countries, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, for people there to evacuate. Whether the Iranian regime is able to follow through on that threat, we'll have to see. But there certainly hasn't been a complete diminution of Iran's ability to fire back.
And this is another example of how this conflict is spreading throughout the region. Sebastian, what is the situation on the other front of this war along Israel's northern border with Lebanon?
That's intensifying day by day. I mean, there were several major airstrikes carried out by Israel on the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Now, there have been attacks on the southern suburbs, and virtually everyone there has been told to evacuate. Hundreds of thousands of people have been told to evacuate from the south. One of the major cities in Lebanon, Tyre, people had an order, essentially a warning, to evacuate there yesterday. Again, hundreds of thousands of people taking to the roads to try and escape. In Beirut, a major concern of Lebanese people there is that these airstrikes have come closer and closer to the heart of the city. 12 people, according to Lebanese officials, were killed in those latest strikes. Around 900 people are reported to have been killed so far. This is a sense that whatever happens with Iran, Israel has launched a major campaign against Lebanon, against Hezbollah, that isn't about to end anytime soon.
Sebastian Usher, thank you so much for joining us.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is joining us now for a lot more on this. So, Nancy, has President Trump given any clarity on a timeline for the conflict with Iran, or when those disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz could ease? I know that he's been asking America's allies to help in that endeavor. They have, for the most part, rejected the advances made by the president. So what is the plan there?
Well, President Trump continues to say that the war is going to wrap up soon, but he hasn't given an end date. And he did say that he wanted to postpone his trip to China because he wanted to be here to monitor the war. And that trip was supposed to take place in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So that's an indication that he thinks the war is going to continue for at least that long. And the situation in the Strait of Hormuz could last even longer than that. We haven't been given a definitive plan from either the White House or the Pentagon on how they are going to deal with the fact that oil tankers simply cannot traverse through the Strait of Hormuz because of the threat from the Iranians. And while there is a possibility that the U.S. will send more warships to the region, even that won't necessarily solve the problem right away because they cannot begin to escort oil tankers into and out of the Persian Gulf until they can contain the threat from Iran, which has said that it will fire missiles. It could even launch drones or even speedboats against oil tankers that try to squeeze through that very narrow strait.
And Nancy, we've been reporting on the top Trump administration of counterterrorism official resigning, Joe Kent citing the war in Iran in a letter where he really didn't mince words at all. What's been the fallout in Washington? What are you hearing?
Well, the White House has been furiously pushing back on what Joe Kent had to say. Obviously, it's not just the fact that he is a senior official who is resigning over the war, but it's the fact that he was the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, basically saying that Iran did not pose a threat to the United States, something that President Trump has been insisting for weeks was the case, that Iran, he said, was a major threat. In fact, at one point, he even said that Iran was about to strike U.S. targets within 3 days. So the White House is now saying that Kent really wasn't involved in advising the president, that he hadn't even been seen around the White House in recent months. And I asked the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, a short time ago about President Trump's claim yesterday that he never thought Kent was that strong when it comes to security. I asked her why, if that's the case, the president named him to such a sensitive position in the first place. Take a listen to her response.
The president gave Joe Kent a chance. He thought he was a good guy with good military experience, and unfortunately, he proved he was not up for the job. And we don't want somebody leading the counterterrorism task force who cannot agree that the #1 state sponsor of terror in this world did not pose a threat to the United States. That's what another falsehood he said in his letter of resignation.
So the president thought Kent was a good guy and wanted to give him a chance at that very high-profile role. The White House was warned when Kent was nominated last year that Kent had a history of embracing conspiracy theories. But nevertheless, he was confirmed by Congress, and now the White House will have to nominate someone else.
All right, Nancy Cordes reporting from the White House for us. Nancy, thank you very much.